Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We just want to say a very quick thank you to everyone who checked out our first KDP video. You guys showed it so much love and support, so we are going to continue on with this series of helping you to build a KDP publishing business if that's what you are into.
And we noticed that some of you guys had some questions too, so we want to help with that.
Definitely. Today's video is about fiction versus nonfiction and which one is the right choice for someone who is just starting their publishing business. You're just getting into it. You know, should you be writing fiction stories or should you head into nonfiction? Let's get into it.
Okay, so we're just going to go through a few pros and cons for the two categories, and we'll start with nonfiction.
Yeah, and guys, this is just our opinion. This is our personal experience. We have published a couple of fiction books and we've published some nonfiction books.
And we don't regret any of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is just our opinion. If you're doing great with one or the other, that's amazing. All right, so for nonfiction, like in my opinion anyway, I should say that it is easier for beginners. Nonfiction, I feel like your books can be found easier, and that's because most, or at least a large amount of the most profitable niches, which are wealth, health, and self-help, are found in nonfiction. So people are already looking for books in that niche before they even know you. So there's a great discoverability factor there.
Another positive for you would be that people don't really care too much who it's written by. It's not such a name game like, in the fiction category. You don't have to be named J.K. Rowling's or something like that to write a self-help book or a nonfiction book.
That is very true. We also found that like nonfiction is great if you have little to no startup money. So we obviously started our publishing business with, I think I started with no money.
Yeah.
We started with like no money and we were able to make money relatively quickly. Yeah, if you don't have a lot of money to start with, nonfiction is perfect for that. Another positive I'd say too is that you don't need to like build like a huge audience or anything like that. You can kind of jump into nonfiction books. Like you said, it doesn't really matter who the books are written by. If they sound interesting, if the description is very intriguing, if the cover is good, basically if you can sell your book well and it's a good quality book, people will buy a nonfiction book from anyone, whereas it does help to know names and to know people in the fiction space.
There's a lot of research that goes in, and we were talking about this before. There's a lot of research that goes into fiction writing that you don't have to really do with nonfiction writing. There's certain categories in fiction that do require, and we were talking about this before, they require a certain formula. And nonfiction books, you can kind of get away with not really winging it, but just doing the research, presenting the information in kind of a free form. We'll explain a little bit about this more in the fiction part of this, but it's a little bit more free form. You get a little bit more freedom.
Now, what are the cons? I can't personally think of any cons. I love nonfiction. I love both. I love both for different reasons, but I personally don't have any nonfiction cons to add.
For me, the only thing that that's the thing, I don't want to say anything that's untrue, but one thing that I could probably say would be that I think that you could get a really, really dedicated audience out of a fiction, out of writing fiction book under a certain pen name or something like that. Like J.K. Rowling's, for example, I keep on throwing her out there, but she has like a cult following of just like of readers ready for, when she launches her next book, whether it be, about Harry Potter or whether she tries her hand at something else, people are already going to be there waiting for that book to come out. And I think that that's something that really comes with people really enjoying universes that you create and everything like that. I think that that's a really good benefit of fiction writing. It's not to say that it can't be done with nonfiction writing, but I don't think that you can get that amount of pull. I've never seen it before from nonfiction, but anyway, maybe.
I have. There's
Have
like,
you?
yeah, like for sure, like in the spiritual niches and stuff like that.
Oh,
in
that's
self-help, there are huge names that people consider like gurus.
You know
So
what? Then never mind me. Then I don't have any. Then. Yeah. Personally, I don't have any.
that's a good one to add to the fiction one, though. As a pro for fiction, I like that one. I like that one for fiction. Do you want to just jump
Yeah.
into? I don't know if you want to
We
keep that. If
yeah. Let's keep it and go straight into fiction then.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the cons of writing fiction. So one of the cons of writing fiction is that, and I'm mentioning this because if you are trying to make money in this publishing business, you're going to notice immediately that your Audible and your paperback book sales are going to drop or be kind of non-existent. And you're going to have a lot of people who they've subscribed to like be able to like read people's books, and you're going to get paid that way. So you're going to get those pay per page reads income, and you're also going to get Kindle downloads, because a lot of people who are fiction lovers, they get the subscription so that they can basically download books all month. So you're going to notice that you're going to get sales from those two primarily, and those income sources are quite smaller. People aren't really going to buy a Kindle book for like $20. You know, that's not normal. It's normally around a couple dollars. You can get away with a little bit more, of course, but it doesn't get your profit per book is not that much. So you're going to notice that immediately. So you have to sell more. That's another con. And also, it's more expensive to have commission. So if these books are being, if you're having your books outsourced, you're going to notice that the fiction writers that you can hire to create your books for you are going to be charging you more. I don't know why that is, but they charge more than nonfiction writers in general. It is what it is.
I would add to that too that it's a little bit easier for your book to become buried, especially if you, because it does make sense to publish books in a popular category, but also you're going to be met with a lot more resistance, a lot more competition in those categories too. And I'm not trying to, shit on any genre or anything like that, but like let's take fantasy for example. There's a dime a dozen authors out there who are writing fantasy stories all with their own fantasy world, with their own brand of elvish language, and those names with the 7 apostrophes in them. There's a lot of those. And so if you do decide that you're going to be publishing fiction in whether it be sci-fi, fantasy, thriller, romance, whatever, you really have to make sure that you go, rather than trying to hit a wide audience, like I'm going to be hitting all fantasy lovers, I'm going to be hitting all sci-fi lovers. You have to go really, really, really niche and narrow rather than to go shallow and wide, because you'd think that you'd catch a lot more fish, you'd catch a lot more readers, but you might just end up being buried. So you should get really specific, or else you can just be wasting your time.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
That's so true. I remember our first book in the fiction genre, and we laugh when we think about it, or we have fond memories of it. And it's in, should I tell you guys the genre? It's in the romance genre, and it sells to this day, even though we published it like 3 years ago, and it's still like, we'll still see little sales trickle in. We're like, oh, that's so cute. But we had to go really niche, like really niche. I think people are just grateful too when you hit keywords in a niche that are not like
Catered to.
yeah, not catered to. People are just thankful for something there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what happened to our book. It didn't make nearly as much as any nonfiction book I've published, but it still sells to this day. It wasn't a total loss, and we still have people who tell us like, we want to hear more, on our little email list and everything. That's another thing. You do need an email list so you can launch to people when it comes to fiction books. Mind you, it's good to have an email list for both, but for fiction, I feel like it's very much needed, especially when you're putting out new books. You need your old audience to kind of hype you up and give that book reviews and help it to, help it not to sink to the bottom of the algorithm. So you do need to be creating a following of some kind for sure with fiction. You can get away with it with nonfiction, make quite a bit of money. You need it for fiction for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's ways to go about getting reviews and getting, a hype email list, an email list that's going to support you outside of the Amazon platform. And we'll further go into that in the future for any of you guys who are interested. Whereas with nonfiction, you don't need that audience initially to do well.
I want to add to that too, and we were talking about this a little earlier, but it's not to try to discourage people from going into the fiction route at all. We just think that there's easier ways of being successful with fiction rather than, just writing your book and throwing it up on Amazon. When you mentioned the audience, like we were even talking about how there's people who are on YouTube right now. If you're really adamant, you have a story in your mind and you want to put it out and you want it to be seen, there are writers that are on YouTube, and what they do is they'll grow their audience And then afterwards, that same YouTube audience, that's who they end up launching their book to. So that's where they get that initial push in the algorithm. And otherwise, if you just wrote your book and put it out there, you might not be seen. So there's ways of going outside of Amazon itself, and rather than just wasting, like, some people spend 6 months, some people spend a year, some people spend years on a book. You don't want to just put it out and then have it disappear in the algorithm. As we are saying, there's ways that we can teach you guys. There's other ways that people have gone about it, and it's just a bit harder to just organically be seen.
That's true. That leads us to the next, I'd say, con. You can see it as a con, kind of, which is it's more hands-on. Fiction writing is more hands-on. It's more of an active income. It takes more to maintain, and part of that maintenance is creating that excited group of people who are ready for your launch days and stuff like that. Also, I would say that it can potentially require more money to be profitable in terms of some of the best-selling fiction writers, especially when they're not incredibly famous, like J.K. Rowling and everything, they're running Facebook ads. So it helps to have additional skills, not just publishing a book and seeing how it does and running some ads on Amazon, and seeing how your book does, like you can do with nonfiction writing. With fiction writing, it helps to have that those additional skills are going to really boost you in the algorithm and boost your sales when like Facebook ads, for example. And then that does cost money. Mind you, you can start with $5 a day, but Facebook ads is notoriously getting more expensive, and it won't take you nearly as far as it used to. It helps to have an ads budget for sure with fiction writing. Okay, so now we're going to get to the pros of publishing fiction books. One of the pros is if you aren't in immediate need for money, you're not trying to supplement your income right now or in the next few months or something like that, and you're okay with seeing long-term profit over time, then I think you'd be okay in this niche. It would work for you.
So if you're passionate about creating a story and gaining an audience from it, sharing a story that's been really close to you, that maybe it's been on your mind for a long while that you just want to put out, if you're passionate about creating characters and worlds and stories, it's not to say that you can't do that. You really should. If that is your passion, you shouldn't throw that away just because, I need some money right now.
Not only that, but another pro of publishing fiction would be that you're able to create additional products. Like, you can do that with nonfiction for sure. There are ways of creating additional products in nonfiction, but I think one of the dreams of many fiction writers is to have their book become something major on, like, in the media, in terms of like becoming a movie, becoming a television series, stuff like that. Like, that's the dream, There is this possibility that it can become so much more than just a book with fiction.
Look at Universal Studios. We're always going back to Harry Potter. Sorry, but there's Universal Studios for Harry Potter. They have their brand of wands. You can buy cups that are Harry Potter. You can buy the clothes. Like, I agree with you. There's not too many. Maybe I just haven't seen it myself, but I haven't seen too many nonfiction books be able to do that.
So at the end of the day, we like we said before, decide what which pros and cons are worth it for you, of course. But if you are passionate about, if you want to make some money, first of all, if you want to make a good amount of money, 5-figure income, even more than that, potentially, nonfiction is amazing for that, and you don't need an audience to get started, and you don't need a lot of money to get started. Publish fiction if you are passionate about story writing, if you're excited about the idea of gaining an audience that's excited to share in your world and share your characters and everything like that. Don't need the money immediately. And of course, do both.
I think that's
if
the
you're
key
passionate.
word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, when you were saying that if you don't need the money immediately, I think that's the key here. Obviously, if you're strapped for cash, you don't want something that, will turn a profit maybe, in a few months from now.
Or
if you're
years.
looking to pay your bills right now. Yeah, or years. I just agree. I think that's key. You have to make sure that you're not struggling right now.
Priorities.
Yeah.
People have talked about fiction writing sinking them into debt, even. Yeah, you can sink into debt quite easily with fiction, especially if you're not writing it on your own. You're getting people to write expensive fiction books for you because for some reason they're more expensive than nonfiction. So you're sinking money in that, then you're sinking money in ads. You're not turning a profit yet. It's hard to gain an audience at times. And then so people have found themselves in debt with fiction, whereas I don't really hear that about nonfiction as much. It can happen, but yeah, that's something to look out for.
I know we're ending this video. But that just reminds me of how we mentioned this before. I don't know if we mentioned it in the video, but even when you get ghostwriters to do it for you, you really have to, like, you still have to really know what you're doing in a category in fiction. What you have them write has to be outlined perfectly. Like, you still have a lot of work to do. It's not really a set and forget, like, oh, I'll just get somebody to write. Again, it takes a lot more work than one might think.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's
So,
true. I think we forgot to mention how there's formulas. There's formulas that a lot of fiction books tend to follow, and people don't talk about that too much. But the audience expects certain things, and the audience will be offended if you break certain rules within certain genres in fiction. So that's something to watch out for. So much research is needed when it comes to stuff like that. But both can be equally satisfying. Yeah.
you can even start with nonfiction and be, and make your way into, writing your fiction stories.
If you want to do both, do both.
That's so true.
Yeah. So yeah, that is our video for today. And we hope that that helps you to get into the right direction, fiction versus nonfiction as a beginner who's just starting in the publishing space. Let us know if you have any more questions down below about book publishing, anything like that, manifesting, the type of money that you want to be making so that you can create a life that you deserve.
And don't forget to like the video and engage with it. We're trying to grow this channel so that we can help a lot more people.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.